Some killers, they become infamous, but only a very, very few become a blueprint. Today, we're diving into the story of Ed Gein. He was a quiet handyman from rural Wisconsin whose secret life didn't just shock a nation. It literally created the source code for some of the most terrifying monsters in all of modern culture.
So let me set the scene for you. It's Plainfield, Wisconsin, November 16th, 1957. It's the first day of deer hunting season, so the town is pretty much deserted. It's quiet. That is, until a man walks into his mother's hardware store and finds it empty. The cash register's open, and there are dark stains on the floor. The police show up, and what do they have to go on? Almost nothing. Just one single clue. A simple sales receipt. It was for the last transaction of the day, made out to a local handyman named Ed Gein. Everybody knew him as kind of odd, but, harmless. Well, that one little slip of paper was about to lead them to a farmhouse that would forever change the meaning of horror. Okay, so following that one clue, the police drive out to Gein's farm. It's isolated, run down, sitting on the edge of town. They're thinking they're looking for a missing person. They had absolutely no idea they were about to step right into the middle of a nightmare.
The first thing they find is in an old shed. It's the body of the missing store owner, Bernice Worden. She was hanging upside down, decapitated, and, well, the way one officer described it was chilling. He said she was field-dressed, which is a hunter's term for gutting a deer. And believe it or not, that wasn't even the worst of it. What was waiting inside the house was so much worse. Once they got inside the house, the true scale of what was going on became terrifyingly clear. I mean, this wasn't just murder. This was some kind of twisted, perverse craftsmanship. As the police took inventory, they found things that just sound impossible. Bowls made from human skulls, chairs upholstered in human skin, a lampshade made from a human face. Gein wasn't just a killer. He was a grotesque artist, and these were his creations. So this just begs the question, right? How does a man known as a reliable handyman, a guy that people in town trusted to babysit their kids, how does he do this? To even begin to understand the monster, we have to look at the incredibly isolated life that created him. If you look at Gein's life, it's really just this steady, relentless march into total solitude. You can see it right here. The family deliberately moves to this remote farm, cutting him off from pretty much everyone. Then, one by one, the people in his life start to disappear. His father, his brother, and then finally, in 1945, his mother. And just like that, he was completely alone, a ghost on his own property. Now, at the absolute center of this lonely world was one overwhelming voice. His mother, Augusta. She was a fanatically religious woman who preached this constant sermon of sin and death. And in her worldview, she was the only good woman on planet Earth. Every other woman was, and this is a direct quote, a promiscuous vessel of the devil. Just imagine, that was the psychological poison that Ed absorbed every single day of his life. So the Gein farm, it really wasn't a home. It was more like a pressure cooker. Augusta was the absolute ruler, and she openly hated her alcoholic husband. She sealed the whole family off from the outside world, and in that vacuum, young Ed became completely and totally dependent on her. He absorbed her toxic, hateful worldview until it became the only reality he knew. Now, there was one person who might have been a lifeline for Ed, someone who could have pulled him back. That was his older brother, Henry. He actually started to challenge their mother's iron grip and was getting worried about Ed's fanatical devotion to her. Then, one day, Henry dies, mysteriously in a brush fire. Ed is the one who leads the police right to the body, which, by the way, had unexplained bruises on its head. But it was ruled an accident. And just like that, the last voice of reason in Ed's life was silenced. Forever. So when Augusta finally died in 1945, Ed's world didn't just collapse, it froze. He literally boarded up her rooms, leaving them completely untouched, like these pristine shrines to her memory. Meanwhile, the rest of the house just decayed into absolute filth around him. He wasn't just trying to preserve her memory, he was trying to deny that she was ever really gone. With his mother physically gone, the very last restraint on his psyche just vanished. And his obsession left to rot and fester in that decaying house. It very quickly escalated from just ghoulish to something truly, truly gruesome. His descent followed this chillingly logical path.
It started with him digging up the graves of recently deceased women, specifically women who reminded him of Augusta. But just having the bodies, that wasn't enough. So he started using the remains for his macabre projects. But eventually, even that wasn't enough. He needed fresh material. And that is when he crossed the line from being a grave robber to being a murderer. So what was the point of all this horror? What was the endgame? Well, he confessed it himself. He was trying to create a woman's suit out of human skin. This wasn't just about preserving his mother's memory anymore. This was about resurrection through transformation. He wanted to literally climb inside her skin and become her.
Okay, so you catch a guy like this, what do you even do? How does the society, how does the justice system even begin to process a mind like this one? The legal and psychiatric battle that came next was almost as bizarre as his crimes, forcing this major confrontation between law, sanity, and an evil that seemed to defy every category.
This is really fascinating. At the time, back in the 50s, he was diagnosed with schizophrenia, and they said he was driven by this obsessive attachment to his mom. But the modern view is pretty different. His behavior was meticulous, it was goal-oriented. That doesn't really fit. Today, it points more towards severe psychopathy, which is the terrifying idea that he wasn't a man who lost touch with reality, but a man who just had no conscience to begin with.
The legal outcome was a complete paradox. At first, he was declared unfit for trial. Then, a decade later, they said he was competent. So in a single day, a judge found him guilty of murder, and then in the next breath found him not guilty by reason of insanity. The system basically said, what you did was pure evil, but your mind is just too broken for us to hold you responsible for it.
So Ed Gein never went to prison. He spent the rest of his life in a mental health institution. And the creepiest part? The staff there described him as a quiet, cooperative, model patient. He died of respiratory failure in 1984. He was 77 years old. Now, here's why this story matters so much beyond all the grim details. And this is the real kicker. Ed Gein was convicted of one murder, and he confessed to a second. But his cultural body count is staggering. His crimes were so uniquely twisted, they provided a whole menu of horrors for an entire generation of storytellers. His crimes became a direct blueprint for horror. Just think about it. The reclusive mama's boy with a shrine to his dead mother, that's Norman Bates in Psycho. The killer who wears a mask of human skin and lives in a house decorated with bones, that's Leatherface. The murderer who skins women to make a woman's suit, that is Buffalo Bill from The Silence of the Lambs. These aren't just inspired by, they are direct lifts from the facts of the Ed Gein case. So when you look at it this way, you realize Gein is this crucial bridge in the horror genre. His story has all the psychological torment of a classic Gothic tale, but the graphic, physical depravity, the idea of using the human body as raw material, that laid the foundation for the entire modern slasher film. So the next time you're watching a horror movie and some new monster steps out of the shadows, it's worth asking yourself, where did it really come from? Because the chilling answer, more often than not, is that it crawled out of the darkness of that lonely farmhouse in Plainfield, Wisconsin, leaving all of us to wonder just how many of our nightmares were truly born in the mind of one quiet, unassuming man.